All right, welcome back to Talk of the Town. We've been talking about Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest making a swing through eastern North Carolina, and we are very honored to have Lieutenant Governor Forest here in the studio with us. How you doing, Dan? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Henry, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for making a trip down to eastern North Carolina. It's tis the season. Political season is here, and
always good to be back.
I know you're out on the road right now supporting a lot of different Republican candidates. You were here yesterday for an event for Brian Brown, very successful, and we appreciate all you do on that.
Absolutely. It's one of the great privileges of our job to be able to go support the people that are working so hard for our state.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the debate. Obviously, the Tillis and Hagan race is on everybody's mind. That's the big one, and it's going to affect all the down ballot races, I think. We're taping this on Tuesday afternoon before the debate on Tuesday night, so we don't know what the fireworks were, but I'm sure there were some. But you know, the one thing that bothers me, you sit on the Board of Education, the State Board of Education. You sit on the Community Colleges Board as Lieutenant Governor for the state. The claim that continues to just absolutely horrify me is the claim by Democrats that Republicans have cut education funding, and people watching these 30-second ads will start to believe the fact that Republicans cut $500,000 out of education. What's the truth about that?
Well, Henry, as you know, I also am the president of the Senate, so I sit in the dais every day watching this legislation be passed. So it is amazing, politicians often play off people's ignorance to what's going on in Raleigh or D.C., and so they throw these sound bites out there, and people do believe them. They actually have impact on the polls. So the truth is that over the last 3 years, Republicans in control of the House and the Senate, and now the governor's mansion, have increased education spending by $1 billion. Just in this last session, $187 million more dollars. Prior to that, $320 million more dollars. More money went into fund teachers. Teachers weren't laid off. Teachers' assistants were not laid off. So those kind of accusations about cutting education are absolutely false. And then the other issue is teacher salaries. We increased teacher salaries this year for the first time in a number of years under any administration. A 7% average teacher pay increase in North Carolina. That's absolutely not a cut. So there's a lot of great things going on with education. Funding is one of them. But we are literally changing the way education works in North Carolina. We are in the process. I chair what's called the Digital Technology Subcommittee on the state board, and we are putting together a digital technology plan with the assistance of the Friday Institute to transform the way education is delivered in North Carolina. I believe that North Carolina will be the first state in the nation to have every single classroom connected to high-speed broadband and have one-to-one devices in the hands of every student, which is a fundamental game changer for how students learn and how education is delivered. That's amazing work. No other state is doing this. No other state is further along than we are. We're helping the FCC write their new rules about how they fund broadband and states. So a lot of great things going on, and people need to know the truth.
And that's the other claim, too. You hear the Republicans and Tom Tillis didn't fund textbooks, but I mean, what you're just talking about, that's where we're going, right? That's what we're funding.
Yeah, and textbooks, that's another one of those false accusations is funding textbooks. Textbooks are funded every year. What the LEAs choose to do with that money is their choice. The General Assembly gives lots of flexibility to the local school districts to spend that money the way they want to. So if they want to take their textbook money and use it for computers, they can do that. Mm-hmm. That's the way I believe it should be, that we should give flexibility to the local school districts to do that. But what the General Assembly did this year is they said, you know what, we're going to make a transition from paper-backed textbooks to digital textbooks in North Carolina, which was the impetus for this digital technology plan. They said, we're going to do this by the year 2017. It's a massive, audacious goal to take on to do that by 2017, but this is something that the General Assembly and the governor set in motion.
No kidding. Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest in the studio with us. Let me switch gears a little bit. One of the other big news stories the last couple of weeks has been the courts. The federal courts are now weighing in, and you've got a handful of judges that are trying to undo a lot of legislation that the elected officials in this state did. We just had the Fourth Circuit federal courts this week rule on Virginia, which is going to obviously at some point and most definitely trickle down with regard to same-sex marriage, the marriage amendment that was passed here in North Carolina, the same-day voting same-day registration was overturned by the federal courts. Are we now entering an era where you're going to continue to see judges legislate from the bench to undo some of the conservative agenda and the progress that's been made in the state?
Well, Henry, I think if you go back to the founding of our country, you'll see it from the very beginning of time. And that is why our founding fathers created this tripart separation, if you will, between the executive and the legislative and the judicial branches. And they're all supposed to hold one another accountable. And that's really what's not happening. Judges have been legislating from the bench for a long time. That's how we got Roe v. Wade. For the abortion legislation or the abortion ruling from the Supreme Court. That's how we got prayer taken out of schools from the Supreme Court. A lot of these decisions are Supreme Court decisions that impact the future of our nation. And that's been going on for a long time. The real issue now is nobody is keeping the judges in check. And somebody has to keep those judges in check. And part of that is the state's responsibility in this instance, where we have passed a constitutional amendment to say we believe in traditional marriage of one man and one woman. Now that's going up to the district court, the Fourth Circuit, and they're going to make a ruling on this. It'll be a single judge making a ruling on this after 62% of North Carolinians said this is what we want. A judge in Virginia will make this ruling, and it's our job as a state to fight that judge, to make sure that we're continuing to fight the way we should. And quite frankly, that's Roy Cooper's job as the Attorney General to do that. And he has said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he has gone against the will of the people. He's going against actually his constitutional responsibility to protect the laws of North Carolina. So that really is where the issue lies, is that we have people that aren't willing to fight the fights that need to be fought to protect the people of North Carolina. You know,
I saw somebody made a comment the other day. They were complaining about the extra money that the governor had authorized to be spent on lawyers to try to fight some of these things, and they were complaining about it. And I was like, yeah, everybody should complain about that money because we're already paying an attorney to do that.
Yeah.
And his name is Roy Cooper, and he just refuses to do what to defend what the people in North Carolina have voted on.
That's right, and not just an attorney; it's a whole staff, hundreds of attorneys that work for the Attorney General, who could be in the process of defending that, and they rightly should do that, as well as the voter laws as well. So, Roy has said, I'm not going to defend that either. So he's basically abdicated his responsibility as the Attorney General in North Carolina because of politics, because he's in the process of running for governor. Again, we've got the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, Dan Forest, in here.
2 years of legislature now under the full regime of, the control of the executive branch and the legislative branch with a Republican governor in both chambers of the House as Republican. What's the scorecard in your opinion? Should the people of North Carolina look at what's been done in 2 years and applaud the work that you and Governor McCrory and Tom Tillis and Senator Berger as the leaders, and then all the rank and file members of the General Assembly have done? What do you think of the highlights? What are you most proud of?
Well, obviously, I think so. I mean, we have a lot of great things going on. I'll lift tax reform up. First time in 60 years that our tax code has been reformed in North Carolina. We were the only state in the nation to do significant tax reform this past, though most states were trying it, and we did it. So we accomplished that. We went from 44th in the nation in business tax climate to 17th in the nation in business tax climate just in that one session. That's huge, telling businesses all over the country that we're open for business. We basically have a flat tax now. We cut personal income tax. We cut corporate income tax as part of a process to, I hope, get to zero on personal and zero on corporate. That's a big deal. We've told the business community all over the world, come to North Carolina, bring your wealth to North Carolina and invest it here because we're not going to take it from you. So that was one thing. Obviously, the voter legislation, the election legislation that took place, I think was a very big deal to safeguard and protect one of our most basic rights and make sure that we know who is going out there to vote in our state. That was pretty bold. Reform of unemployment insurance. We had $2.7 billion in debt in unemployment insurance. In just a few months, we've paid most of that back. We have about $500 million left. That falls on the backs of small businesses in our state, and unemployment went down in North Carolina. We're creating more jobs than anybody but Texas in this country. There's a lot of great things going on, but there's also all the underlying stuff that you don't see. Reforming the Department of Transportation's way of assigning roads to the state and where roads are going to be constructed. It's one of the first things the governor did. A lot of the work that the governor's doing behind the scenes to revamp our technology infrastructure, to revamp Department of Health and Human Human Services. We talk about needing money for things. There's $1.5 billion of waste, abuse, whatever going on in DHHS, and that has to be reformed as well. There's things that you're not going to get kudos for. There are things that people aren't going to raise up the flagpole and say, hey, look what we're doing.
Right.
Reforming DENR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. John Scavarla is doing an amazing job there. Sharon Decker is doing an amazing job at Commerce. We're bringing new companies in all the time. We're trying to change the regulations and the rules about how we can compete with other states. All foundational work that nobody will lift up, but yes, it's really good stuff, and I could go on for hours just mentioning the work that's been done.
I'm glad you mentioned some of the other cabinet secretaries. I've said this many times before. When we had Dr. Vaush on last week, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. She's a brilliant woman, and she's been absolutely maligned by the News Observer and other media to the point that people really think she's, doing a terrible job. But she's done a terrific job. Yeah. And you talk about the unemployment insurance. I mean, when I heard we were going to try to pay back $2.7 billion in 2 or 3 years, I thought, no, that's too quick. But we've done it. Unemployment has gone down. And
look to Dale Folwell for that. I mean, Dale Folwell was one of my competitors in my race. Yeah,
we had Dale on the show recently.
He's doing a great job.
That. Yeah. John Scavarla, Tony Tata, Sharon Decker, all of the cabinet secretary. I mean, there's no doubt we have some very strong leadership in state government, yourself included. So we appreciate all the effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're doing. I know you got to get on the road and do other things. What else is on your mind? You don't get out and come to the East that often. What else? What do you want to tell the people of Eastern North Carolina about what's happening in the state government right now? Anything on your mind? I'll just give you an open forum.
I'll give a plug, Henry, because my staff would not be happy if I didn't. But one of the things we did in this past session was create the Education Endowment Fund for North Carolina. It's something that's never been done in our state before. We've never had a fund for education, and the purpose of the fund is to reward excellent teachers in our state. And I've said many times that I believe that our best and brightest teachers should be among the highest paid in the nation. I still believe that. The caveat to that is they need to be the best and the brightest teachers in the nation teaching our kids. And so we need to have some creative mechanisms in order to fund what they do, and that's what the Education Endowment Fund does. It creates a pool of money that hopefully will be self-sustaining over time, that we can get it to $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. If it reached the point of having $3 billion in the endowment, you could fund $300 million a year off of the interest alone, which is more than what we did for 7% increases for these teachers. And so we want to grow that. Corporations can donate a tax-deductible donation to the endowment. Individuals can give. They can we're going to have a checkoff box on taxes so they can give from their tax returns. We created a I Support Teachers license plate. So the proceeds from that license plate will go to this fund as well. And if anybody wants to help us out with that, we need to get 500 signatures before we can get that license plate on the road. And we're just starting that process now. But you can go to isupportteachers.com. isupportteachers.com, and you can find the application for that. But I believe it's a good thing that will really help flatten out the ebbs and flows of the economy so that when we need to reward excellence in education, we can do that.
Well, thanks for all your work. We appreciate what you're doing. It's great to have you here in Greenville, and thanks for coming by the studio today.
Thanks for having me on, Henry.
Absolutely.
Anytime.